Sir. Thank you for your kind words, and I'm sure I would stand up to your expectations. Well, friends, trauma can happen because of external forces, and sometimes the external force can be you yourself as a doctor. Globe perforation, as I said, is not an uncommon complication. And remember, in this era of topical anesthesia, it is fading in the incidence. Survey of Royal College of Surgeons showed that anesthetists were responsible for 75 cases of block perforation because there the anesthetist gave the block, and most of the times they failed in recognizing the event when it happened. If you look at the risk of having a block perforation, it is similar between consultants and residents. Well, peribulbar anesthesia is the commonest cause of iatrogenic perforation, and it is the double injection technique. And especially when you inject in the superinasal quadrant, the chances of perforation increases. Myopia because of elongated eyeballs, especially more than 25 millimeter thin sclera, posterior staphyloma, and the eyes which have undergone buckle are more prone for developing a perforation while giving block. Equally is deep set eyes and severe enophthalmic eyes. Well, these are the two stages. In first stage, there is a penetration, that is single prick, and you inject all the content into the eye. And naturally, because of that, there is a sudden rise of IOP, which leads to sudden visual loss and because of CRAO and toxicity. In second stage, there is a double penetration, that is perforation, and there the contents are injected extraocularly, and therefore they are missed majority of the times, and the visual loss is noted post-operatively. They have a typical characteristic break, which are oval in shape, and they are predominantly present in superinasal and infratemporal quadrant. Very rarely you can have multiple sewing machine-like breaks because of the repeated penetration. Well, this is a linear scar in the peripapillary region. This is the intravitreal depomedrol injected, while this is a choroidal scar, which you can see post-operatively. If the injection happens intraocularly, as I said, there would be sudden pain, and you would realize this contents and all inside the eye. While if it is injected extraocularly, most of the times patient presents with this complaints on a following post-operative day. While you are operating a case as a case of vitreous hemorrhage, what are the signs which you see? It can be a puckered scleral scar or a choroidal scar like this, or retinal breaks, which I have already alluded to. Management, well, rarely you have a small break with a clear media, no intraocular content. In that case, simple laser retinopexy is sufficient. But yes, sometimes it is associated with a limited detachment, especially in superior quadrant with a clear media. Well, you can do a pneumoretinopexy. But majority of the patients need vitrectomy, and early vitrectomy means better prognosis because it removes toxic intraocular contents, and it prevents severe PVR by removing the scaffold necessary for ingrowth. Prognosis depends on early management. So these are few of the videos from our hospital. This patient was posted for cataract surgery. They had suspected break. Well, now we are taking him for further management, a combined surgery. And here we are doing a phaco. The difficulty in phaco in such cases is because of the hemorrhage, there is any lack of glow, and you have to operate under absence of glow. This is again a 3D surgery video, which you can appreciate over here. The magnification and the beauty of it. And after that, we did a vitrectomy, and you can see the scar over there. It was laser followed by gas tamponade. This patient underwent this is a second case who was referred to us having retinal detachment about 3 weeks after the cataract surgery. And if you see, besides the vitreous hemorrhage, you can see one break over here, a linear scar over the macula, and the third break over here. Classic choroidal scar. So it means it was a perforation with a scar, needle track, which you can see with the macular hole as well, created by the perforation. Well, this is another case which was referred to us as a retinal detachment with PVR, having history of undergoing cataract surgery few weeks back. And you can see a classic oval hole suggestive of perforation. Well, the classic steps of vitreoretinal are done, and we could settle the hole. This is the last case in my bouquet, where this was a high myopic eye which had undergone buckle at our center few years back. He had a cataract. He underwent cataract surgery a day ahead before reporting to us with a vitreous hemorrhage. Well, hemorrhage, you can see a very high myopic globe. And on a myopic globe, when you see after removing the hemorrhage, there is a superior detachment. And here you can see a radial tear. Yes, a radial tear because of the needle. And so after lasering this area and putting a gas, this case could be managed. So we can create an iatrogenic break in the whole perforation, and it can happen even at the experienced surgeon's hand, because the survey says that the equal incidence at the hands of residents and consultants. Peribulbar anesthesia is the commonest culprit, and supranasal quadrant and double injection technique is more responsible for this. Here, early diagnosis and management leads to better prognosis. When you have a intraocular injection of the content, whatever you are injected, vitrectomy would be the procedure of choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Prashant.
Prashant, a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
Nati has probably lived through the era of retrobulbar injections when there were no peribulbar injections. Do you think that might have made a difference to the frequency with which the perforations occur now? And secondly, is it more common with myopes, which have elongated eyeballs and possibly posterior staphylomas? So what would you recommend for those who need a block? What kind of block would you suggest be given?
So there are no studies comparing a retrobulbar block versus a peribulbar block. But if you go by the technique which we have done in our post-graduation for retrobulbar before peribulbar became prominent, I think retrobulbar is more prone to create the breaks. The literature usually is of retrobulbar of older times. Now coming to your latter part of question, now the incidence is more so basically because we are doing, majority of the faculties are doing topical anesthesia, operating the doing phacoemulsification. So the residents are less trained into giving a peribulbar block. So per se, we cannot blame a peribulbar block over retrobulbar block being responsible for increased incidence. But it is because the unfamiliarity of the residents who have to prick less compared to what we used to prick for anesthesia. That is the reason.
Myopes and recommended technique.
Yes, in a myope, I think peribulbar is the recommended technique, preferably in the outer temporal quadrant. Do not try it in this. And importantly, insinuate your finger between the orbital margin and the globe to create a space, and do not move towards the apex of the orbit. Just go parallel to the orbit, that will suffice.
Yeah, I think the major difference is availability of Hyalase now. When retrobulbars were given, that time Hyalase was not routinely used.
Correct.
And with the availability of hyaluronic acid, you can be safely away from the globe and inject well.
Thank you.
And with regard to the management, would you advocate an early intervention by the vitreous surgeon, or do you think there is a right time after the injury to wait and then do it? What is the right time?
The right time is immediate. As I showed in my
Sooner the better.
only the first case was referred to us within 24 hours. The rest were accidentally, rather it was delayed by the anterior segment surgeon, telling him you have atrius hemorrhage which will clear, and it was referred to us 3 to 4 weeks back later. So that meant a poor prognosis with a detachment, with the intraocular content taking the toll of optic nerve and macular toxicity.
What do you think of the peribulbar injections using a blunt cannula around subtenons or?
Frankly speaking, unless you have a very thin sclera, even the blunt cannulas can penetrate. It all depends upon how vigilant and how less casual you are when you are injecting an eye. Do not make it as a casual effort as we do routinely. What happens, everyone takes it very casually, doing a block, and it is left over to the